Okay, in this video we're going to learn how to make a flash puzzle. This is an example of the type of puzzle we're going to make for this particular project. This video is going to be cut into several pieces because there's a lot to cover in this project, in this assignment. So we're going to take it nice and slow. But what I wanted to do was show you this puzzle. This is a jigsaw puzzle designed in Flash, and you're going to do this, you're going to add this as part of your project or your part of your final project. And what this puzzle does is it's got a drag feature. You'll notice that these are buttons, and as we start to drag the piece into certain locations that fit, you'll notice how much bigger this piece is right here than the actual square that it fits into, and notice that when it's in the correct position it locks down and shrinks down. That's done via action scripting, and we'll talk about more about this, but this puzzle is pretty much the way we're going to do this, build this kind of particular puzzle. So as we start to move the pieces, you'll notice that as we get closer to where they're supposed to be, they'll drop down. If there's some interference, though, sometimes we have to move these pieces out of the way so that they can work correctly. So as I move that piece, notice how that piece drops in, this piece drops in, and you'll see that the puzzle goes together quite nicely. What we're going to do, and what I'm going to do, is when I demonstrate this, we're going to build a puzzle just like this. And you can see how the puzzle looks. I'm going to show you how to take all the pieces, build all the pieces. It's very complicated, so you really need to pay attention to the lecture. And notice that these pieces are buttons that slip and lock into, as they get closer to where they're supposed to be, they just kind of snap in right into that. Again, when they're when they get scrambled, the first action script scrambles them, and they're larger than the piece when they lock in, and once they lock in they get down to their original size. So this is the puzzle that we're going to construct today. Okay, so I want you to go ahead and make a scene, another scene, and call this one Jigsaw Puzzle. This is the puzzle that we just played with, but we're going to build one from scratch. Okay, the other thing that you need to do is, let's make sure that for this scene, we want to make sure that this scene screen is 550 by 400 pixels. So this screen for this one is going to be 550 by 400, and the actual puzzle size itself is only going to be 400 by 300. So I want you to pick an image and make the original image. The image that we're going to bring into here should be 400 by 300. Okay, so the original image that we're going to work with is actually going to be 400 by 300. That's the actual finished size of the puzzle. But we get to go in and put some frames and things like that within it, and that was that border that was all around it. I want you to go ahead and make 5 layers. This one we're going to call our background layer, and that's basically where we're going to put our little frame. This layer here is going to be our spaces layer, and we'll talk more about that as we go. These are going to be we're going to have 2 layers that are going to have puzzle pieces on them, and so this is going to be a little confusing in the beginning, but we're going to work through it and hopefully not confuse you too much. This one is going to be the grid, the puzzle grid. You can call it puzzle grid, you can call it grid, you can call it pretty much anything you want. And all it is are a bunch of lines. It's literally just a bunch of lines that show us where the pieces are going to lay out. Okay, the 4th layer is actually going to be our pieces layer. We're going to call this pieces, and this is where our draggable puzzle pieces are going to be nested. The spaces are going to be invisible puzzle pieces that the actual puzzle pieces are going to snap to, and we'll talk more about this. And then this is going to be a randomizing layer. This is where we're going to We can call it random pieces. We can call it action scripting. Remember, this is where we usually put our action scripting. We're just going to call it random pieces, or you can call it randomize. You can call it scripting. You can pretty much call it whatever you want. But these are the layers that we're going to be working with right now. You're probably going to want to make sure that you have your rulers up too, because for us, we're going to be playing around with our grids. So it's real important that we get everything snapped into place. And remember, it's pretty easy for us to go in and pull off a grid line. All we have to do is bring it down and snap it into place. Okay, so these are pretty easy to move around. And again, if we don't like where it's placed, we can just move it around. All right. I want you to go ahead and lay out a 400 by 300 inner window. If it's too hard for you to do, one of the things that you can do is just come in here. We'll make a box. I don't want to stroke around it, so I'm going to eliminate the stroke. You can just make that box, click on it, and then turn this box, make the width 400 and the height 300. Okay, and then that gives us the exact size of our internal layer here. Okay, and then that allows us to also go ahead and set it up according to where it needs to be in here. So remember that this is 400 by 550, so we want to make sure that our, and this can be any color, it doesn't really matter. Actually, I'm going to take that, cut that off there, and put it on my background layer. Edit, paste in place, so that it's on this layer, our background layer here, because this isn't going to move. We're not getting rid of this layer. That's as, you know, we're there. This is not going to be anywhere. All right, the other thing we want to do is we want to make sure that this is, let's make sure, let's view this. I want to make sure that's rulers. Let's modify our document real quick. We're in 550 pixels. Okay, good. Okay. So we want to make sure that we're at 550 by 400. So we want to make sure that this gets pulled off. So let's go ahead and pull this grid line to about there, which should be roughly 750, and then of course we want to make sure that our grid line here is at 50 there. So let's go ahead and move this. So we're roughly within that parameter right there. That should be, we want to make sure we're 50 pixels here, 50 pixels here, 75 pixels here, and again 75 pixels on this side, because remember what we're doing is we're putting a 400 by 300 centerpiece in here. This can be any color. Again, this is just going to be our background, and then the next thing I'm going to do, in fact, let's go ahead and I'm going to group this for real quick, because the next thing I'm going to do is we'll put a little border around this, and we want it to look like wood. So let's just kind of pick a brown. Let's see if we can get a brown in here somewhere. We're not getting a lot of browns, and I really don't feel like going in and picking one out somewhere. So I'm just going to grab this, put it right here. Okay. So we can go in and play with it later, but for right now, I'm not going to put a gradient on it or anything like that. Not right now, because I just don't have time. But remember, if we wanted to go in and put a gradient in there, we could actually just kind of come in here, oops, and play with our gradients. Okay, remember we can do it that way. Oops, I don't want to do that. We can do it that way, or we can play with it in our windows and go to our color swatches, color mixers, that whole thing, and play with it there as well. But for right now, it's not that important. What's more important is that you understand how to do this puzzle. Okay, so that's our little background. We're going to lock that background down because we don't want to play with it. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to import to my library. For right now, I'm going to import it to my library. Oops, I'm going to work on my spaces here. I'm going to go to File, Import, to Library, and I'm going to navigate to my Rainforest folder because I have gone in and created what I think will hopefully be a good puzzle piece. Let's go to Window, Library, and you'll see Puzzle right here, and this is what I'm going to use to create my puzzle pieces. This is what I'm going to actually come in here and do so that I can create the puzzle pieces that I need for this exercise. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag this and notice, boom, it fits perfect right there. Okay, so there's my puzzle. This is what I'm going to use to create those pieces. Now what I want to do is I want to be real careful. I'm going to kind of come in and work close because I want to be able to see everything. I'm going to work a little. I want to make sure that this looks good. We don't have anything. Yeah, it's perfect. Okay, the other thing now, let's go to our puzzle grid and we want to throw some lines down. This is where we want to throw. We just want to make a line here and we're going to come in and every 100, what we want to do is put a grid down at every 100 spot across. Okay, our puzzle pieces are going to be 100 by 100. The reason we're going to throw the grid down is it's going to make it easier for us to cut those pieces on our grid. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to go to 75 right there. Okay, that looks like it's about roughly 75. I'm going to come down, and if that's not right, obviously I can hold my shift key down. I can obviously come in and change that. If you're, this is 400 by 300, so let's be real careful in how we do this because we don't want to make this, let's be honest, we just don't want to make this puzzle huge. I mean, you could make this puzzle, in this case it's going to be 4 pieces across and 3 pieces down, so we want to be real careful with that. We don't want to have to come in here. In fact, we know that's wrong already. We don't want to have to come in here and make a ton of little pieces and then have to play around with our numbers because we have programming. You can make this puzzle 30 by 30 if you wanted to. You could make it 600 by 600, but the idea is right now I just want you to learn how to do the puzzle. Okay, so what I did is I put my grid in here, and remember we can look at our alignments here. We can get these lines perfectly aligned if we wanted to by selecting this, and we want to make sure that our X and our Y's, what we're more worried about is making sure that these are, pretty damn close to being accurate as possible. Okay, we can play around all we want. This is pretty damn close. I'm not going to worry about that one. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do the exact same thing. If I wanted to, what I could have done is I could have copy and pasted these lines and thrown them off exactly 100 if I was really worried about it, and just make sure that these lines are as close to middling as possible. 380, perfect. Same thing with these. We can come in and just kind of go in and make sure that these lines are exactly where they needed to be. We're looking at the Y direction. Remember, we're not looking at the X. And then this one should be 100 off that, and it's at 250.5. So we're real close. Remember that we're looking to make sure these lines are exactly where they need to be. I can come in here and clip these, and I probably will. All I'm going to do is actually just come in here and grab them like this. Because I have my grid line set up, you'll notice that when this grid overlaps the grid line, it turns orange right here, or pink, or what, not orange, but pink or red. I'm going to clip it, hit delete. Oops, I don't want to get rid of that. I don't want to get rid of it get rid of the image, so I'm going to click on that. I'm going to hit delete, get rid of that. And I'm going to do the same thing over here, and I'm going to come pretty close. If I want to throw a grid line in there, I can. But for right now, I'm not going to worry too much about it. I can always just zoom in here and clip that like that so that it's as close. And remember, it's that close because we picked up the picture, so we don't want to pick up the picture. We don't want to delete the picture. We're going to grab this here. And we're going to clip that, deselect the picture so you don't get rid of that. Make sure that your picture is on the spaces here. We're going to go back. Let's go back and view this again. Show frame. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to grab the grid lines, select them. I'm going to deselect that picture, hold the shift key and hit the picture, and now I'm going to group these. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to group these grid lines because I'm going to use these lines to cut up my puzzle pieces. One other thing that I want you to do before you do anything else, because it's going to be real important, when we start to play with this, and you don't have to do it now, I take that back, you don't need to do it now, but we're going to make an invisible button, and that invisible button is going to help us put together this puzzle. But before I get you confused and all that, I want you to go ahead, we're going to lock down the grid. We've got our background locked and our grid locked. I want you to go to spaces now, and we're going to actually come in here, and we're going to build our, come in here and build the puzzle now. We're going to cut the pieces up. So what I want you to do is right here, we're going to zoom in and we're going to move through this pretty quickly, I hope. And I'm going to select this like this, and I'm just going to come in here. Oops, I don't want to do that. I don't want to get. In fact, you know what? I can go ahead and now that I have my grid lines, I can get rid of my grid or my ruler here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this and move it up just a smidge. Make sure that I don't see, good, I don't see any red anywhere. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually come in here and I'm going to start to cut this piece, these puzzle pieces right here. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to grab this. It's going to be a little more difficult than you, oops, gosh darn it, than you think, because we don't want it to move, and that's unfortunately the dang problem here, is that we're going to end up moving this. So one of the things we can do now is we have two choices. We can take this into Photoshop and we can cut it up there, or we can go ahead and try and cut it up in here. Let's see, we're going to come right here and we're going to grab it like this. Oh, darn, darn, darn. Let's do this. I'm going to break this apart. Let's convert this. We're going to go ahead and we're going to trace the bitmap. Okay, we need to do that. We're going to have to do that for this because we need to have this broken apart. It's lost a little bit, but that's okay because the idea here is we're trying to teach you how to build a puzzle, so we're not going to worry too much about the quality just yet. If this were your final project, then I would go ahead and change the quality. We've talked about how to do trace bitmap before. This is a JPEG, and so now it's a bitmap. I mean, it's a vector image, so all of these will be better quality. But if this were your final project, I would want you to have a little better image. Okay, so back to this. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to grab over the grid lines here. So I'm going to try and get as close to those grid lines, and notice when I'm over the grid line, it goes gray. I'm going to grab that, select it. Okay, I'm going to go modify, and I want to convert it to a symbol. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and convert this to a symbol, and I'm just going to call it piece 1. Okay, we want it to be a movie clip, so we're just going to go ahead and make it a movie clip right off the bat. So there's our first movie clip, and here it is, piece 1. In a minute we're going to put all these in one folder, but I want you to go through now, and what we're going to do is grab each piece here. Okay, and this is kind of where it starts to get tricky, so I want you to zoom in to get as good a piece as you can. So then we're going to come here. If I want to, I can go ahead and delete that now because I don't need it. I really don't need to have that here. Now the other thing we can do is make sure if we're snapping, we can have snap to grid, snap to object, snap to pixels, you know, whatever you want. If we had grid lines out, which probably isn't a bad idea, because if we want to go ahead and throw some grid lines down now, this is probably a pretty good idea to do, because we are getting pretty much to a real close area. We want to be as close as possible, and this will probably, hopefully, make it a little easier for us. In fact, I can go back and undo that piece right there. In fact, I think I will. I undid my puzzle piece because I want to be able to snap to grid and have all of these turn out as close to perfect as possible, because it's really going to be difficult for us later if we don't do this right. Okay, so let's go back to this process. We're going to go back up here. I'm going to go ahead and grab this, and all I'm going to do is, remember, I'm snapping to grid, so when I grab something here, hopefully it's going to go right to the grid. Remember, when you get to where your grid lines are, select it, go to Modify, Convert to Symbol. We're going to turn this into a movie clip and call it Piece 1. And there it is. It's Piece 1 right there. We're going to do the same thing here. We can go ahead and delete that if we wanted to. We don't need it anymore. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to grab, oops, nope, I don't want to grab that. I'm just going to come in here. You can lock your grid lines down too if you want. We're going to grab that, Modify, Convert to Symbol, and there's Piece 2. So what I want you to do is I want you to take your whole puzzle, go through now, and make all the puzzle pieces. You should have 12 in all, because there's 4 across and 3 down, so you'll have 12 pieces in all. And when you're done, we'll come back and I'll show you what to do when you're done there. Okay, so what we've done is, or what I've done here is, I've cut all my pieces. You'll see 1, 2, 3. These are all the pieces now that we are using or going to use to make our puzzle. There are several things that I want you to think about. Is how you cut up your puzzle, and be very careful when you put your pieces together, when you start to cut the puzzle, that you delete the piece that you just made, because if you don't, when you go to create the next piece and you go to modify it and convert to symbol, what's going to end up happening is, if let's say I'm going to actually drop this down in here into Piece 1, and we'll be able to come in here and play with it and hook it up, and I throw Piece 2 in here. When I go to make Piece 1 and 2, or make 2, if I don't get rid of Piece 1, when I go to convert Piece 2 to a symbol, it's going to pick up Piece 1 when it goes to convert it. Okay, it just links it automatically. So that's why when you create Piece 1, you have to delete it. Then you create Piece 2, you convert it to the movie clip, you delete it, you create Piece 3, and so on and so forth. Because if you don't, you're going to end up with a huge mess. So those are some of the things I want you to think about. Okay, the next thing I want you to do now is I want you to go ahead and make a folder, and we're going to call this, we're just going to call these, the pieces, or spaces. And we're going to go ahead and throw all of these, well, we're going to put these in here, but I want you to go ahead and do one more thing. I want you to, we're going to duplicate this, and I don't want to make this a piece. I'm going to call this draggable Piece 1. Okay? And you're going to do the same thing with Piece 2. We're going to duplicate it, and we're going to call it draggable Piece 2, and so forth and so on. So what I want you to do is I want you to make duplicates of all the pieces that you just created, because we're going to use those as our puzzle pieces. We're going to actually use those as the draggable pieces to our puzzle. So I just want you to go in and create another set of puzzle pieces. Okay, so hopefully you paused the video and you created all your draggable pieces. What we did is we just took, remember, we just took this piece, went right mouse clicked on it, went to duplicate, and duplicated the clip. Now what I want you to do is this is spaces, so we're just going to go ahead and drop all of these into this folder. We're going to put all those in that little spaces folder. Then we're going to create another folder. Whoops. Let's go ahead and create another folder. And we're going to call this draggable. Okay. Oops. Okay. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to grab all these. We're going to drag those in there. And we're going to put them in that. So now we have the draggable, the puzzle itself, the main, and we could get rid of that now if we wanted to, and spaces. The other thing that I want you to do now is I want you to create a button, okay, that's 100 by 100, and call it invisible button. So all we're going to do is I'm going to come here. I don't want to stroke around it. I want it to go ahead and be gray like my background here. Doesn't really matter. And I'm just going to grab my rectangle tool and I'm just going to grab this like that. I'm going to come back here and try and remember where I made it. And I'm going to make this 100 by 100. Okay. I'm going to hit enter. There it is. So it's 100 by 100. I'm going to go to modify, convert to symbol. I'm going to call it a button. And I'm going to call it invisible button. Okay, and there it is. So right here, and I want you to double click on invisible button, and I just want you to take the up state and move it over to the hit state. So again, all I did was I double clicked on the invisible button and I drug this left mouse button down from here. So I'll put it back. I went from here to here. So I have nothing in the up, over, or down state, only in the hit state. And you'll see why we're going to do that later. I'm going to go ahead and go back to my scene. I'm going to dump, this is good. You'll see that this is going to be over our puzzle piece when we go to lay over the draggable button. We'll talk about that later. But I'm going to go ahead and just delete it. So now I should have my draggable puzzle pieces here. I have my invisible button, and I have my spaces. Okay, you should be at this level. If you're not, pause the video and start here, or finish this up, I'm sorry. Finish this piece of it up, and when you come back, we'll go in and put the spaces on the puzzle, and we'll finish up that part of it, because that's just, we're just barely getting into this. We're probably a quarter into the video right now.